You are listening to the Lucha Central Podcast Network. And now, Lucha Central Weekly.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast. This is the podcast that lets you know all of the latest happening in the world of Lucha Libre. Each week our team discusses news and events from this past week as well as preview the week ahead, covering Mexico-based promotions and top independents along with luchador-related news from throughout the United States. The Lucha Central Weekly Podcast is part of the Lucha Central Podcast Network on luchacentral.com. This podcast and others from the network are also available on all major podcast streaming platforms like iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play, Podbay, Speaker, and much, much more. This show is also being streamed through our partners at thechairshot.com. My name is Miranda Morales. I'm one of the co-hosts of the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast, and let me introduce the rest of the team. Introducing first, he is the dashing one, Mr. Dusty Murphy. Dusty, how's it going today?
Oh, it's going fantastic. How's it going for you, Miranda?
It's good. We've been watching wrestling now for like over a week straight.
So many days, yeah.
So many days. No
It's
break.
not over yet.
And it's not over yet. No days off now. It just is insane. So we got a lot to cover this week, but we're not going to do it without the third member of our team. And that's who?
Who?
It's the one and only Brendan Barr.
That's who.
Well, hey there.
That was the fan noise. That was the fan noise in the background. I don't have any buttons or anything like that.
Crowd.
The roaring crowd.
Just pipe it in and then have all the people at home do the thumbs up like they do in the Thunderdome.
Yeah. I mean, essentially.
Yeah.
We need a Thunderdome episode of the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast. That'd be sweet. That'd be super
The
sweet.
Lucha Dome.
Oh. You know what though? I think Vampiro tried something like that in Vegas like a few years ago. I think he did try to, not like literally like a Lucha Dome, but like I think he tried to run a show and called it Lucha Dome or something like that.
Yeah.
So Vampiro actually did it. So if that just comes around, someone says, someone should do the Lucha Dome and Vampiro says he already did it, he actually already did it.
Yeah, this time he's telling the truth.
Yeah. I mean, is that part of Vampiro Bingo? Is that on there too?
I don't know. I think that's like an instant win.
Man. Well, gentlemen, we've hit a milestone on the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast with this week's edition, 50 episodes.
Yeah.
Wow. It's gone by, so
it's
fast.
Really fast. really fast. I mean, some of that is, the fact that I can't leave home. I mean, I go to work. But at the same time, like, it has gone really, when we were talking about something to talk about at the start of the show, I didn't even think of it. And then I was doing my notes and I went, 50 episodes? Geez, where did that happen? How?
Yeah.
And there's more.
And yeah, I think that still counts. Maybe the pilot too. I'm not sure. So we may be at 51, or somewhere like 49. I'm not sure, but 50 sounds like a good number.
Yeah.
We've been doing this now for almost a year.
Wow.
So it's been a pleasure, you guys, to work with you.
Really
It's been an awesome experience, and we've covered so much in 1 year, especially what the year was in 2020 and what wasn't happening. Now coming back out of it, it's pretty crazy. But you're right. I mean, I think with the pandemic and shows maybe not running as regularly. I mean, if it was, this show would be like 3 hours long because there'd be no way we could cover everything. And we're starting to see that now with more promotions picking up and things happening. But it also allows us to applaud and really focus on those promotions that are doing great work with Lucha Libre. So it's a double-edged sword, but still one that I think as wrestling fans we've been able to benefit from.
Yeah. We've been able to. I do, however, look forward to being able to change the name of this first segment that we're about to go to.
Yeah. Cool with that, Brendan. Though I'm kind of scared. I I'm a creature of habit. What do we do when we can't call this segment the road back to shows? What do
we will think of,
because I can't handle it.
We will think of something, I'm sure.
Okay, that makes me feel better. But yeah, you're right. I just totally had like a freak out moment when you're like, this isn't gonna be the segment forever. It's like, but we've been doing the same thing now for 50 episodes. What are we gonna do?
We're probably gonna do it for a few more.
That's probably true. Well, with that, we gotta keep up the tradition of 50 episodes, and who knows, could be one of the last times we do this. Let's kick it off. It gets us more listeners. Okay. For the very last time, once in a lifetime. And then we do it again next week. We learn so much from WWE. Sorry, I get distracted easily. We are going to kick off the show with the road back to shows with Brendan.
Hey, yeah, so, the reason I say that we're not gonna, this probably isn't the last episode of this, even though it'd be nice, is, Mexico City, still orange. There's the big news on that is that they have one more cycle. So I believe it's going to be 2 weeks from the day the show goes up, for it to go to yellow. And it's not terrible. It's not the end of the world if it doesn't go to yellow, but if it does go to yellow, then they can potentially have fans at the anniversary show. And that's, of course, what they want. They want to have that WrestleMania-like moment where they can have fans at the anniversary show and really have kind of that different atmosphere. Which, I mean, legitimately did make it feel more like wrestling the way that I remembered it. And even though it was the WWE, it still got me a little bit choked up with when they did it, so I'm really rooting for CMLL to have their moment too, because that'd be very cool.
Yeah.
I didn't have a lot else on this week's road back to shows. A lot of things are more about a lot of the news so far. We should point out that that little peek behind there, we are a little off of our normal cycle here, so a lot of the news that I normally am able to grab for the Indie Roundup hasn't happened yet because we're a little bit early. So there may be a really fat road back to shows next week, but there was a statement that I'm seeing if I making sure I didn't cover this before. There was a statement that the government put out, again condemning the secret shows that have been happening, and yet we're still moving forward with running shows in the orange environment. I'm so confused by Mexico's government. Please, someone help me. All right, I'm just going over a quick couple of notes today. It looks like I'm good on this, actually. I'm just going to move ahead. We're just going to stick with orange and talking about the CMLL anniversary show, and then we're going to plunge right into the Indie Roundup. I thought I had something, but I couldn't pull up my notes on it quickly enough, so we're just going to plunge right ahead, and I'll add it in later. We can fix that in post, right?
There is no such thing as post. We're doing it live. No.
What I'm hearing is there's no problem. We'll fix it in post. It'll be great.
We'll send it to our people, how that goes. But, it's so hold on. I do have a question. So explain, you mentioned that there's this one last rotation or one last cycle in orange.
Yes.
Like, what does that mean?
Well, so we've been using this system, the almost like a stoplight system, only there's the four colors, the red, orange, yellow, and green. The orange, they're still not supposed to be doing public showing. That's before, when they were in orange, they were like, no, people need to stay home, fans need to stay home, especially there was limited amount of shopping. There was, they had to come up, AAA had to come up with ideas like Auto Lucha, where people were isolated in order to be at shows. Yellow is where conditions are supposedly safe enough that you can do like the 30% occupancy that you see in like American baseball games or at the AEW tapings or that sort of thing. So you can have your little pods, your family, mom and dad and the kids can all go sit in one little group and then be 6 feet away from another group of mom and dad and the kids and so on like that. So that's what the 2 weeks is for. If they can get yellow in the next squad, because in the next cycle, they can have fans at the show. But, if it goes past that, they will still be in the orange conditions as they're moving ahead with planning the anniversary show, which would mean that the government wouldn't actually clear them to have fans at the show.
Okay. That makes sense. And with yellow, that still would mean limited capacity, but they would be able to have fans at shows.
Correct.
Yeah. So that's pretty big. So it is kind of a big, it's going to be an important week in Mexico, as far as Mexico City, as far as, where this color level teeters on. 'Cause that could mean the difference of being able to sell tickets and have fans even in a limited capacity to not having fans at all and it be, an empty arena.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I explained that once, but that was probably 50 episodes ago, so
Again, I also have the attention span of a squirrel, so for me, it's good to, regroup for a second and, because it is we don't have that system here in, the United States. It's so different. Every state is different. Arizona lifted a lot of its restrictions about 2 to 3 weeks ago. So now it's, fair game, whereas other states are still, holding having restrictions. So it's a different dynamic in the United States than what we're used to. So it's good to kind of like get re-educated in how Mexico's still handling the COVID situation, because that too, a lot of fans are wondering, WWE just had WrestleMania and was able to have 20,000 fans. And so they wonder why other countries can't do that. And not all countries have Florida. That's why.
Yeah, they have Florida. We have Florida, and that's, yeah. So here in Washington, we're almost exactly the same as Mexico, only we have numbers instead of colors, and we're in about the same predicament. We're at phase 3, hoping to go to phase 3, and maybe that'll mean we'll get shows happening again, but, I'm not holding my breath, which is why I'm unfortunately not super optimistic about Mexico City's chances, because they're just as crazy as us.
And I think big for Lucha Libre, at least in the United States, California started to reopen.
Yes.
So California started to make strides, and I've noticed a lot of shows popping up in California, including several Lucha Libre. So on the stateside front, it does look like one of the bigger states that has a Lucha Libre influence and presence is slowly starting to pick back up. So for you stateside fans, that is an interesting development.
Yes. Well, Well, as I always say during the Indie Roundup, I want to see and hear more about those shows. So if that counts for you too, Miranda. If you're hearing about shows in California, shoot me a link. Let me see what's going on with these guys.
Yeah. Well, the last one I heard, Mr. Iguana fought someone on marijuana back on a pole match.
Yeah. Pound on a pole match.
A pound on a pole match. Yes.
Pound on
and Mr. Iguana won. Won that bag of pot.
Yeah, he won. So that was in California. Mr. Iguana, Remy Marcel, pound on a pole match, and that was the last I heard. It was a Canna Pro show. So congratulations to Mr. Iguana on that.
Yeah,
that is the most California match I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Better than a hot dog.
Better.
That's true. Oh man, I wonder. I haven't been able to see any clips, so I don't know how Yeska fared in it. I did see her. She did get thrown in that match. I know his opponent Remy Marcel threw Yeska across there. I hope she's okay. Thoughts and prayers are with Yeska.
Yes.
I hope she's recovering well at home.
That's not how you treat a mother.
That's not how you treat ladies. So rude. So rude. Anyways,
we'll get more on that later in the show too. So we'll revisit this conversation about that's not how you.
But the indie roundup, you did have some news.
I did have some news. I had an update from the GCW Acid Cup, our luchadors. Unsurprising to me, Laredo Kid won his first round of matchup. Dragon Bane also won his first round matchup. And then in the luchador on luchador violence, you had Aries defeating Aramis in the first round to move on. I was unable to get results from the second round as of the time of this recording, so I will update you all on that next week. The GCW Acid Cup was from WrestleMania weekend, and things get a little crazy around WrestleMania weekend, and people, as Miranda alluded to, we've watched so much wrestling, and so the results were a little slow coming in for me. But that was our first round, and I'm going to try and pull some stuff up on IWTV or get somebody who I know who was at one of those shows to help out. But that was our big one, and I was hoping to have all of the results for you. Unfortunately, all I know for sure is Laredo Kid, Dragon Bane, and Aries were still alive in the second round of that cup. And I didn't see any of them announcing that they won, so they probably all had to wrestle each other, because that's how it does, right? Get the luchadors all to wrestle each other, put on an amazing show, and then you can have somebody else, like an iguana, win.
Yes, I was able to see only clips through Wrestling with Unicorns. Shout out to Martine again. That's an awesome page. I know they were all over the GCW shows this past weekend, and there's some great clips from those matches on Wrestling with Unicorns social media pages.
That was yes, I should have given that shout out. That was where I was gonna go thumbing for some more clips too, because there's always fun. But there's so much fun stuff there, I get distracted.
Yes, literally, there's like hundreds and hundreds of clips. It's talk about distractions. It's so easy to get wrapped up because they take such great clips, and they just are able to capture some great angles and moments. So shout out to Wrestling with Unicorns. Follow them on social media.
Absolutely. And that's actually all I had for the roundup at this time. Again, a lot of my my fact finding has been cut a little tiny bit short this week because of other changes and other things. But as always, send me your results, especially if you were at any of the WrestleMania weekend shows. So if Wrestling with Unicorns you're listening, just send me your clips right away. That's the best way for me to get all. I'll still go over your channel and watch all your other fun stuff. But anybody, wrestlers, fans, promoters, aliens. They're back in the mix now. I've seen AEW. There's aliens that are able to send me information now too. Any of you, send me your stuff. We will talk about it on the air or give you a shout out. I am still screening people. This is one of the reasons that it's a little shorter is because I'm still screening certain shows that are not practicing COVID safety stuff, especially after the government just gave a warning about no more secret shows. So, you know who you are. Stop doing it. Stop being bad. But that's our indie roundup.
Thank you, Brendan, for the road back to shows and the indie roundup. Up next, we're going to kick it off to Denise Salcedo, who brings us this week's Lucha Central.
Why should you visit thechairshot.com? Thechairshot.com is your home for hard-hitting reviews, news, opinion, and analysis with attitude. Why? Because you're smarter than the average fan. Thechairshot.com. Always use your head.
Hey everyone, it's Denise Salcedo here in Lucha Central with a reminder of where and when to catch all of the great network content this week. Get the full lineup and listen to all of our shows in the podcast network section of luchacentral.com. On Tuesdays, Mats, and Mayhem takes you inside the world of Lucha Underground as they take you weekly through the series with the benefit of hindsight and the benefit of special guests from the groundbreaking series. Check out the premiere video stream every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern on the Lucha Central YouTube channel and at luchacentral.com. Then listen to it on your favorite podcast platform every Wednesday. Tuesday nights live, it's Wrestle Boss, where Fabi Chulo talks MMA and pro wrestling with special guests and listener call-ins. Visit WrestleBossLive.com Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific to listen live or call in with questions or download the show on podcast platforms on Wednesdays. Wednesday nights live on Facebook, it's Spanish show La Mesa de los Márgaros, giving you both the news and the chisme from around the lucha world. Special guests and a whole lot of fun make it one of the most talked about shows in Mexico. Thursdays, it's Straight Out of the Bodega with Papo Esco and PWR promoter Gabriel Ramirez, as they have guests from throughout the wrestling world pull up to give an inside look into their careers. From indie standouts to television superstars, each week brings a new name and perspective. On Friday, it's your double dose of Lucha Central Weekly podcast, one in English y el otro en español. Lucha Central Weekly is where you'll find all the top stories of the week, both inside and out of the ring from Mexico and anywhere luchadores are in action across the globe. Be sure to subscribe and follow all your favorite Lucha Central Network series on your favorite podcast platforms, either by their own series name or subscribe to the Lucha Central Podcast Network show pages to get all of the shows in one easy feed. And please consider giving a rating to help more fans find the shows that you love. For now, this is Denise Salcedo signing off from Lucha Central. Have a great week.
Lucha-Masks.com by Pro Wrestling Revolution, bringing you, in partnership with Masked Republic, the Lucha Brothers, as well as Japanese legend Ultimo Dragon. Go to lucha-masks.com and fight Lucha Strong with masks from your favorite Lucha legends and Pro Wrestling Revolution luchadores. Stay safe in style and represent your favorite luchador. Get yours now at lucha-masks.com, powered by Pro Wrestling Revolution.
Thank you to Denise, who lets us know what's happening throughout the Lucha Central Podcast Network. Also, a shout out to her. She did both a WrestleMania preview show and a post show, which you can find the videos on Lucha Central's YouTube page. So go ahead and check those out. So we talked earlier about we've been doing this show for about 50 episodes. And we're going to do a swerve. Usually we start off with one company. We're starting with another. We're going to switch it off. And we're going to start off by talking about AEW, because there's been some news that has come out today that we want to highlight. And of course, talk about this week's shows, Dark, Elevation, and Dynamite. So Dusty, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, well, first up we had AEW Dark Elevation, and we actually had a few matches that were fantastic and were lucha oriented, but our highlight matches this week are, first up, Pac and Phoenix versus Andre Montoya and Vari Morales. This was little more than an extended squash match, like a cat toying with a mouse, with Death Triangle drawing it out to send a message to the Young Bucks in a very heel move, but I liked it. I liked the Death Triangle with an edge. It's a little confusing about the heel versus heel dynamic with Young Bucks, but it's interesting at least. And then our main focus was Thunder Rosa versus Diamante. What a great match. This consistently could have gone either way. It could have been Rosa's match, could have been Diamante's match. I loved it. This was obviously much more mat-based and much more kind of brawl-like than a lot of people expect from lucha, especially women's lucha. But this is the lucha I love. Like, it was incredible. They were so tough. They were so, just fantastic and charismatic. You couldn't take your eyes off the screen while they wrestled. Fantastic match. Highly recommend Thunder Rosa versus Diamante. And next up, we had Wednesday Night Dynamite, the Young Bucks versus the Death Triangle of Pac and Rey Fenix. This was a fantastic match. Oh my gosh, crazy. There was a Black Arrow, a fake out pin. Totally got me. Everything about it was just great, actually. The Young Bucks are the biggest douchebag heels. Like, you just love to hate them. And so good. They came out in the Air Dior shoes, but they had counterfeit versions on. I don't know if they got ripped off or if they were purposefully wearing counterfeit, but if they were purposefully wearing counterfeit, that's so good.
Yes, I feel like that's the aesthetic. Counterfeit is cool now.
Yeah, I loved it. Like, the whole thing was just, the scumbag Young Bucks is for me. The match ended with what would have been a foul in Mexico, and they mentioned that on commentary when Matt Jackson pulled Phoenix's mask off and got the pin because Phoenix wasn't able to cover his face. Such a great heel move. It does make the Death Triangle more of the face team, obviously, in the dynamic, which is interesting, especially with Dark Elevation, where they gave us the heel version of Death Triangle. But it's exciting, and I feel like this probably isn't the end of our matches between the Young Bucks and the Death Triangle, so I'm excited about that, even if the finish wasn't... Generally, I hate an unmasking finish, but something about it worked this week. It was unique and exciting. I always forget that Phoenix is bald under that mask till it comes off. A great match. Highly recommend it. Tag team wrestling at its finest, for sure. And then, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, for once, I am not upset by the heel versus heel dynamic on this, right? They can be the brutal breaker of bones style heel team and go against, as you put it, that douchey heel thing.
Yeah. There's differences.
It's just such different dynamics. Yeah.
And I think we needed that in order to really showcase the difference now with the Young Bucks. Yeah. Like, I think you needed to show that they aren't, because I feel like maybe the Young Bucks were in this weird place where you couldn't quite figure out what they were doing, what direction they were going in with their personalities and their characters. And at some points they were kind of like the mean, rude heels, but it never quite came off. So I'm glad they settled into this new look, and it seemed to fit and work really well in this match, because you had that hard-hitting, mean-ass heels within the Death Triangle of Pac and Rey Fenix that were very distinct and clear. So it made it easier for me to digest this change of the Young Bucks.
You don't have to have black and white necessarily, but you do need to have different shades, and that's what we got. I haven't seen all of it, just highlights, but it really worked for me with this. Yeah,
it was an excellent match. I I'm in a different time zone than Brendan Miranda, so I got to see it where they haven't yet, and it was just fantastic. It's the opening match on Dynamite, and oh my gosh, like we say it all the time when Phoenix is on here too, or in a match rather, but Phoenix is the best wrestler in the world, like hands down. Phoenix is the best. Everything he does just looks so crisp and clean and effortless. His rope walking, he just does everything so perfectly that it's almost aggravating. He's so good.
See, I think his brother's the better one, but
I think that Pentagon has more charisma, but I think that Phoenix has more like technical ability.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah,
Penta has the higher ceiling due to his charismatic ability.
That's
like
okay.
Phoenix.
I see where you're coming from.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I just feel like Phoenix has got a little something special in a technical sense, but Pentagon obviously has the charisma and the personality and just the vibe that is so impossible to work on. Anybody can get great at moves, but you can't get great at what he does.
No,
he's
got that intangible presence that just makes him, memorable. People, your kids are going to be seeing kids riding along bikes on the beach in a Pentagon mask shouting just like they did Rey Mysterio to you, right? Like that's what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
So cool. Yeah. Speaking of charismatic personalities, Thunder Rosa was on Dynamite this week as she had a video package, and she says she doesn't just want the AEW Women's Championship, she wants the NWA belt back too. She says Serena Deeb has the belt that she wants, but Sheeta has the other belt that she wants, and she's here to take over the world. And I am so here for this. Thunder Rosa on my TV, AEW's figured out what I want. I so good. Everything they do with Thunder Rosa is perfect. And that kind of leads us into our next segment, our discussion topic for the week. Ivelisse has left, been fired, quit, whatever you want to say, from AEW, and it is interesting. She pretty much said that she was signed to AEW and that she just hadn't been announced All Elite for whatever reason. But then it came out today that after she announced she was no longer with the company that she was working on a per appearance deal. And her tweet said, "History repeats itself, unfortunately. I speak up about mistreatment and get let go. That's life." And that's kind of her go-to when she leaves a company, is that she spoke up about something. She never really says what. Then there was an update after that that AEW wrestlers were aware that she wasn't with the company as long as a month ago. And then she said that her mistreatment in the company had come from a coach, and that there were witnesses. The coach had mistreated her and other women, but she was suspended and left in limbo, and just now had been let go. But at the same time, nothing had been done about Thunder Rosa slandering Ivelisse's name the entire time in AEW and doing everything to sabotage Ivelisse's position there. Ivelisse kept quiet, but she says Thunder Rosa also had a history of getting involved with officials in order to get ahead, which is why there was a lawsuit and everything in Lucha Underground. That's a direct quote. And then she tweeted more about Rosa, that Rosa was an unsafe worker in Lucha Underground, stuff like that. She also dealt with the accusations, that she has similar problems at every company she works for. As she said, no, only major companies played by politics. And so who knows what's going on.
Yeah.
If she has direct problems, she needs to just come out and say what they were, because the vagueness is doing her no favors. I know you saw a lot of the Twitter conversation regarding this.
Yeah, I went dumpster diving in the. I love Twitter.
Yeah, those Twitter. Twitters, yes.
There are some very toxic elements of Twitter, and I went wading through a lot of that. So. To your point, a lot of what was being said directly to her, which is what I found really disgusting, was that, everywhere you go, you see a jerk. Maybe that means you're the jerk. It was more or less the translated version of that. And her response to that in a lot of places is, and it's the same thing Rosa would say too. So I mean, I know this is true. You have to stand up for yourself at some point in your career.
Yeah.
And
I think too, there's just a natural thing. We'll just call it like it is. Women are viewed in a different dynamic when they stand up for themselves versus men.
Absolutely.
We wouldn't be having the same conversation if a man left AEW for whatever reason. If anything, people would be drawn to it. They'd be like, tell me more. What happened? Mm-hmm. Whereas when a woman does it, it's like, well, maybe you're the problem. And I think that is a big dynamic in wrestling in general, which I think it's gotten better as far as people being more supportive of that. But also, as Brendan saw, there's still lots of people who are going to doubt someone's opinion or experience because they're a woman.
Yeah, I mean, and the reality is, as someone who's heard this conversation multiple times, this is something you have to do in wrestling, period. It's not if you're a man or a woman. You have to, at some point, know where your definition in line is. This is the character I want to portray. This is the type of persona I want to have. This is the career arc I want to have. And you have to advocate for yourself on that, because especially in a big company like AEW or WWE, you're not going to necessarily have someone to do that for you. They're going to do what they think is best for them, and it may coincide with what you want, but you have to figure out what. And to your point, the women often are then viewed as being demanding or inappropriate, or other words that kind of dismiss it, whereas the men are focused. Or driven, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and again, it's a necessary part, and on some people it works against them to totally to their detriment. I mean, Enzo Amore had a fantastic view of what he wanted to have happen, but he pushed too hard for it, and he had other problems too. Don't get me wrong on that.
I mean, another kind of comparable or example too is Leo Rush. He had an opinion about how he should be treated and how he did, and he ended up having to take a risk on himself. And there's still arguments to this day about, the perceptions, but he still ended up becoming very successful and doing his thing. But you're absolutely right. The perception is just skewed between men and women. Also, I can imagine, like, at the end of the day, AEW is a startup company. It's a startup, and they are still probably figuring out structure. They still don't have the same setup as a well-established company. So it could be for people who need structure, who need something more stable. That company may not be a good fit for them, and that could be why it wasn't a good fit for her, and it may not be a good fit for other people that we think would do great in AEW. Maybe they want more structure, they want some more stability, they want something different that, say, a WWE holds. As much as WWE is very focused more on the entertainment and it's ran by Vince and certain people, it provides a level of structure and stability that AEW is still seemingly trying to figure out.
So to that point, there is, to the best of my knowledge, no actual HR department at AEW. And one of the many things that Ivelisse is, I shouldn't emphasize it that. One of the things that Ivelisse is well documented on being unhappy with is the status of people working in the business that were either outed in the Me Too movement or should have been, or she feels should have been outed in the Me Too movement. So, between her talking about her having issues with a coach and her potentially having issues, because one of the many things that came up that I found very credible was that she might have also spoken with people backstage about the unhappiness of certain employees or certain people being hired to be used on TV.
Mm-hmm.
And
certain celebrities, yeah.
Both of those stand to reason that if you don't have a structure, to what Miranda was just saying, of a place to go to talk about that where you're going to feel heard, then you're not going to you're going to eventually not feel comfortable being there and maybe asked to leave on your own. So I mean,
yeah, it's very interesting to hear this. We talked about what AEW, when they first came out, had promised as a company of not only, being different in the product, but also specifically what they mentioned about their treatment and vision for women. And that still seems like it's a struggle on television. But also now this could impact how the company is perceived in general in the treatment of women. Now, I'm sure in the next few days too, maybe more people will come out. I don't know. I mean, I can't believe Thunder Rosa has stayed so calm under all of this because, she really went into her, and it seems like it's a documented history, but it's also like throwing, don't come for me unless I call for you type of thing. Like, don't say stuff about me unless I start saying stuff about you first. So I don't know, but like that's a whole other thing too, where like, man, that just is, it's palatable, like how much tension there is between those two.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, hearing the second wave of call-outs this time just really made it evident to me that there was a lot of friction that just never got settled. And I've gone back and I've rewatched that match. I can definitely see frustration on both women at points.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what all's going on there. I may never know because that sounds like it's deeply personal. But I'm interested to see how what I expect we're going to see out of Rosa is a whole lot of nothing. She's not going to take this public and drag it into deep waters. If her past is any indicator, that's just too much for her to lose. She's got her own promotion. She's on the rise right now, and yeah.
And for Ivelisse, I mean, now independent promotions are starting back up. There is a lot more activity, so she is able to go back into the independent scene and continue her work there. And I think she will be, welcomed back by lots of promotions who have been missing her. And
are you kidding? She's going to be a bigger draw after all of this.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, I think at the end of the day, and we've seen it, some people at AEW, they're brought on and they're not a good fit, or it's not a good match and they go their separate ways. I think this is one of the more public ones though, that it's in a negative light. And it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I think there's been some stories here and there about negative experiences with AEW and paying and, those types of things. They haven't gotten a whole lot of traction, for many reasons. So I'm curious if this will get any more traction, or next week when we, record, if, it's going to be gone and not going to be discussed, or will it even be a bigger story next week?
Yeah, it's just so hard to guess at this point. Like you say, AEW's been very Teflon-like, where nothing sticks to them so far, and so it's kind of interesting. Like, if this was WWE, I feel like we'd have heard a lot more about it.
Well, we're still in the honeymoon period as far as fans and AEW. There's still a lot of fans that are willing to cut them a lot of slack because they're not WWE.
Yeah, that's true.
And we'll see how long that lasts. The more big things like this that pop up, the more people are going to start really paying attention to it and saying this is really the better option that I thought it was going to be, and it'll start sticking. It's just all a question of how long it takes for the majority of people to get to that point. I mean, you can go back and listen to our previous 50 episodes, and you can kind of feel the difference there too, because we started off, we were
really optimistic.
Very, very positive about AEW and very optimistic, and now we're calling them out for inconsistent booking and poor use of the luchadors and all that fun stuff that we've been talking about on WWE doing since day one.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, good point. Well, we're going to jump into WWE, the aftermath of WrestleMania, and a little bit of WrestleMania as well, Dusty. So go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, well, first we had SmackDown, which was kind of the pre-show of WrestleMania, as we mentioned last week. And it turns out the rumors I had heard were wrong. Bray and Dominic did not win the tag titles at WrestleMania SmackDown. The Dirty Dogs of Dolph Ziggler and Glorious Bobby Roode retained, despite the staggering odds, in a match that was so old and so tired that it voted for Lyndon Johnson. That match, it was awful. And definitely not WrestleMania caliber, if that's what we were supposed to get with SmackDown. I was displeased. But we had a chance at redemption with the Andre the Giant Battle Royal. This was really your only chance, the only chance outside of that tag match, to see any of the WWE luchadors on WrestleMania weekend. We got a very quick face-off between Lucha House Party that saw Lince and Grand Metalik eliminate Kalisto, and then Metalik eliminated Lince Dorado by surprise, only to be eliminated by Baron Corbin, just to show us that WWE hates us, and they hate all the things we care about.
See what I was talking about earlier? They make all the luchadors fight each other, and then they have somebody else win. It's maddening.
Angel Garza, Ricochet, they were there too. They hung on a little while longer, but this was largely, the Battle Royale was largely just a vehicle to make Jey Uso look like a big boy, but not a man like his cousin Roman. And Raw has been...
Firewords, Dusty. I like it.
Well, Raw has been damn near unwatchable for a long time, and now the stink is on SmackDown, too.
It was so, talk about the Raw after WrestleMania has always been one of my favorite things of the entire year.
Yeah.
And it fell so flat.
Oh my gosh.
Flat on its face.
It was the worst. Well, and just nothing good for Lucha fans on Raw after WrestleMania. And it kind of resets the stories for the year. So, if we were going to see luchadors, we'd have seen them.
It should have been there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Been there.
And we also saw no Bad Bunny on the Raw after WrestleMania, which surprised me, because at WrestleMania, it was amazing. Bad Bunny and Damon Priest versus The Miz and Morrison. It started out with a lot of rabbit mascots dancing to the ring, and Miz and Morrison showed up with their hair full of secrets, and they performed Hey Hey, Hop Hop for the crowd. Bad Bunny did not perform, but rode in on a semi-truck tractor trailer with a bunny perch on the top. It was one of the coolest visuals of the weekend. Yeah. The match itself was excellent. All the hype we heard about Bad Bunny being a really good wrestler wasn't just talk. He backed it up in the ring. We have to mention the amazing Bunny Destroyer he hit on John Morrison at ringside, and he had a fantastic crossbody dive on The Miz to get the match for his team. So what did you guys think of this match? I really enjoyed it.
I mean, I had to admit, I pretty much expected that he was gonna hit that high cross body. That was gonna be kind of
really good.
Yeah, that looked great.
But I was shocked when I saw the Destroyer, and I was shocked that he did 3/4 of the match.
He did a lot of work
in. Yeah, he came in, he took control, then he lost control, and after they cheated, of course, and then he made the hot tag. So, this was pretty much a classic 80s tag team match, except for there was a celebrity in there instead of Bobby Eaton.
It was set up really well. I think it could have been a little bit shorter as far as some of the, the beatdown that Bad Bunny had. But I still feel like the psychology and purpose behind it was really good. Mm-hmm. A big shout out to Miz and Morrison, who did fantastic. You talk about that Bunny Destroyer. That would have not happened if it wasn't for John Morrison.
No,
I did not think
he was
going to
get. See it.
I did not think that rotation was going to happen. So I thought it was, I was surprised. I have to admit, I wasn't expecting that much from Bad Bunny. It was hard to say how, because, he's not an athlete. He'd been training, but you wondered how much could he really do with only about 4 months of training. But he did really solid work. The crowd seemed to really enjoy it. And, I think it was the perfect vehicle for Damian Priest.
Absolutely.
I think that he wouldn't have had any opportunity to be on WrestleMania if it wasn't for this program with Bad Bunny. And It was, a great story that they told. It was, a great way to leverage a celebrity, but also someone who's a fan and appreciates, being a wrestling fan and, wrestlers who he's grown up watching. So, I think it was, for me, a very pleasant surprise. Like, all of it went so well, really entertaining, and I just really enjoyed watching it.
Oh, me too. It was the match of the night for me. Well, I guess it and the women's title match, obviously. Everybody was excited about that. But the bar for celebrity matches is so low, especially at WrestleMania, that when he came out and he was good, I mean, he was pretty good. It was compared to the other celebrities, he was Kota Ibushi in there, it was really impressive. And so it was nice to see him have that moment as a fan, because we can all have that vicarious moment with him, the fan that gets to go in there and win. And that was very cool, I thought, and a highlight of the night for me.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to mention a tweet by Andrade, who's living in some bitter sauce right now. I can totally understand. With his departure from WWE, he mentioned no luchadors, no Mexicans were part of WrestleMania on either night. I do think that they did get some good publicity, not only from Bad Bunny, but the connection between Bad Bunny and Damian Priest as Puerto Ricans. And there was several good articles that I read that it did touch a Latino demographic. But I also agree with him that there should have been luchadors on WrestleMania. That's how you get to the Latino demographic.
Absolutely.
You just don't have one or two. You have a variety of Latinos, especially the trained luchadors who do this for a living. So I understood exactly where he came from, but I also thought that Bad Bunny and Damian Priest did a fantastic job of bringing in a Latino audience and representing Latinos at WrestleMania.
It's absolutely true. If you think of WWE as being the greatest hits of wrestling, which it kind of is, and then WrestleMania would be that compilation album they put out once a year. And to see no luchadors on it, to have nobody from Mexico on it, is also a tacit statement that this wrestling, lucha doesn't matter. This is what's important. This is what people want to see, not that. And so it's dismissive of lucha and dismissive of Mexico in a way that is more impactful and has more ripples than they would necessarily consider, I think. And it furthers that impression that it's just flips, and just fun stuff and not of importance to the average fan, because the average fan never gets the chance to get invested in it that way.
Well, and if you think about, too, the moveset that Bad Bunny did was more spot fest,
It really was. So
then why...
was best coast spot.
So then why don't you have luchadors on there, too? If that's literally what they are capable, not what they only do, but they're capable of doing it, better. That too kind of boggles my mind. I don't know.
I mean, I'm just gonna, I had the thought, I'm gonna say it out loud. You're telling me they couldn't have cut that woman's gauntlet match on night one in half?
You know what? That's the consensus, though. That's the consensus. Like, that's, I don't want to. I want to respect it, but, that's the consensus. And that's hard. It's a hard thing for my heart.
Yeah.
Like, I love and respect all of the women that were involved in that match, but it was the longest match of the night over any of the main events or the intro, and there were too many tag teams in it. So, like, if you trim down the tag teams, trim down the time a little bit, you have a good solid match that they can elevate themselves in, and you have time to have a Lucha Libre match in there where they can elevate themselves in there. But so it is not. I am not disrespecting the performers.
No,
they did.
They did really well, but you're saying something that I think the majority of fans are thinking about, whether they thought the SmackDown Tag Team title should be on there, whether they thought a Lucha match should have been on there, whether they thought another type of women's match should have been on there, or they only had the one women's match instead of the 2 over 2 nights. I think that is the consensus, that was maybe a little bit of a misstep. And it's hard because, you know, the women have had struggles over many, many years to have spots at WrestleMania. So it's not saying that they shouldn't have spots. But when you think about, you know, now that it's 2 nights and where they could have added on or cut time or rearranged some things, this is one where they could have done it, especially in a night where it's about the spectacle. You know, and like Dusty said, it kind of devalues their view of Lucha Libre, the fact that it's not on there, and the fact that they end up bringing a celebrity to kind of do the same spots that you could have had anyone on your roster do.
And you've got 6 to 10 of the best luchadors in the world.
Yep.
Depending on which rosters you're pulling from. So, I mean, yeah, the fact that with the talent pool that they have, and their kind of vision that we didn't get a single luchador on the show, as much as I do love and respect Bad Bunny for putting on a great match, they could have carved out an extra 3 to 7 minutes somewhere. I mean, just because I found an easy place to do it doesn't mean
they absolutely could have, but you know, hopefully that's a change for next year. Big congratulations to Bad Bunny and Damian Priest, Wepa, because I can't help but not be excited that they represented. So
great night on them. I was super happy with it. It was a fun match.
Yes. Well, the results for all the WWE events, WrestleMania, Raw, SmackDown, and AEW are available on luchacentral.com. So make sure if you missed out, check it out there. Up next, we're going to talk about This Week in ROH. Brendan, tell us a little bit about what we saw.
Oh man.
Yes.
So last week we skipped ROH because they didn't really have anything lucha-centric on it. But that's probably because they were like, don't worry, we got you next week.
Yes.
We started off with Delirious versus Rocky Romero. Now, these guys did not necessarily wrestle exceptionally Lucha Libre. So if you are looking for a traditional Lucha Libre match, this was not going to be your cup of tea. But they are 2 well-traveled wrestlers who wrestled with each other a long time. It was a very entertaining match. The announcers did point out, and they didn't name anybody else who's in this club, but they did point out that these are 2 guys who have wrestled in Madison Square Garden, Korakuen Hall, and Arena Mexico. So there's not a lot of people, even at the high ends of rosters in WWE and AEW, that can say that. So worth a look just on that alone. And I don't think you will be very disappointed. It's a fun match. But then we had, for the main event, we had Mexa Squad against the Foundation. And some of you who've been paying attention to the ROH product might be wondering, how's that going to work? Because I thought Flamita and everybody else were unhappy with each other. So, but they had that. They had a backstage interview where Flamita came out and he said, I love you guys more than anybody else in this company. We're brothers. More important than that, we're Aztecs. Let's go out and do this. And it really genuinely looked like they were going to be back on the same page like we talked about when they did the breakup. We're like, oh, that's just how, brothers fight. And I mean, they're not real life brothers, but they might as well be brothers. They've been on the road together with each other for the better part of a decade. In America, where they can't really rely on the kindness of strangers as much as some other people might be able to. So yeah, it looked like that was going to happen, and then we got out there, we got some hints of it, we saw a little bit of the fun double team happening. Once again, though, they started making it obvious that they were not on the same page. This time, though, it was Bandido who was behind. He was the one who seemed to miss a spot here or miscommunicate there, and Flamita at one point looked frustrated, but then they stopped in the middle of the match, and only the Foundation would allow this to happen, I swear, and hugged it out. And then they went and then they went back and continued to wrestle. Unfortunately, Bandido continued to have some issues. At one point, this is where I knew it was going to go bad. He missed the Insiguri altogether on whichever member of the Foundation it was, and caught Flamita straight with it, and so it started to break down, as you can imagine, and eventually Flamita stormed away, leaving Bandido to try and salvage the match. And then when that didn't quite work, Flamita came back. We, still teasing the hot tag, but instead he basically gave him the middle finger and walked away for real this time. So it's more or less over for now, with Flamita working with Mexa Squad. Rey Horus wasn't involved directly in any of the fighting that's going on. This was very much about Bandido and Flamita kind of going their separate ways. So it'll be, they have ways to do that too. They can try and he might wind up tag teaming on either side or wrestling either side. There's a lot of fun things that can come out of this. But again, I was reminded of the dynamic here. Now, this is on a much lesser scale than what I'm about to say, but I was reminded so much of the Lucha Bros, and how, like we were talking earlier, about how you have Bandido and Pentagon, Bandido and Phoenix, who are, when you talk about that, those are the people that people usually talk about. That the attention is on those two. Bandido is kind of the transcendent one of Mexa blood. But Flamita in this was solid. He was really good, and he could be a main eventer in ROH next week, and nobody would bat an eye. He could probably go to AEW and well, I won't say WWE, and be at the top of the card. He's that good. But because he's in this tag team with Bandido, he's not necessarily being looked at the same way. So this might be a really good breakout feud for him, and it might do really big things. I'm excited to see that, for the possibility of that, and see what ROH does with this. Did either of you guys get to see this week's show?
I was able to see a bit of the delirious Rocky Romero match, and the exact comments you mentioned, that commentary made about, the fact that they've been able to wrestle in some of the most important places in the world. So I felt like that added a level to the match that helped like respect their history and legacy within Ring of Honor. I think that also kind of ties into what they're building up to with the 500th episode. Kind of continuing to show the lines and correlations between wrestling history and Ring of Honor. So that was something that to me, that's how I interpreted, but I haven't been able to see that other match quite yet. But definitely it's on the list to watch.
Oh yeah. Once again, I'm going to recommend I haven't seen MLW this week, but this is ROH is my big recommend for the week for Lucha fans.
Yeah, we'll get to MLW, and you're right about that. I mean, at least half of it. We'll get to it in a second. We'll just get to it in a second.
I just top to bottom, this was a loaded show, and I looked at the MLW lineup, and I was like, yeah, we'll get something good out of it, but I think ROH is the one to.
Yes, we did. You're predicting the future pretty well. That's great. So that's Ring of Honor. While we're on that, Brendan, though, I know you have a Master Republic update, specifically an update for boss fight figurines.
Yeah. So, we were talking about they were going to have too many of them in stores yet, but Boss Fight has gotten their big restock, and they are shipping to stores or ordering from the website now. Specifically, I saw a picture from Republic of Lucha, which is the Lucha Bros shop, with pictures of the Boss Fight figures on their walls. So, I mean, if you're in the California area and you want to go get your Boss Fight super articulated figure signed, you probably can find a way to make that happen in there. You might pay a little bit of a premium for it. So you might want to just go to the Boss Fight website and order your figures and bring it to a show with you sometime too. I'm looking out for you, Eric. I want them to buy from you too.
I got
but that
Eric.
Is I'm actually will get mine from Eric. Now that I've seen them, my original problem was they were the wrong scale, but the points of articulation just make it.
Oh my gosh, and
so,
they are so much
much
nicer in hand than you can expect from the pictures.
Yeah.
It's hard to describe how much. I mean, they look incredible.
And then also last minute, just coming down the wire, the Lucha Mass, who I believe we ran the spot for them at the top of the show.
Yes.
They announced today they have a big restock, including some Lucha Bros stuff that has come out. So today, Wednesday, when we're recording this, they have a bunch of new stuff there, and hopefully most of it will still be there by the time this goes on to the air. But I'm excited. I saw that they have jackets now. They have a LA Park full face jacket that I can order, and I'm just, right. And they still have lots of the Rob Van Dam new masks too, so which are very nice looking.
Those look very cool. Yeah, so don't forget to go to Boss Fights for your Lucha Bros action figures, and lucha-masks.com for all of your mask-related needs, and apparently some cool jackets. Go check it out.
Yeah.
Up next, we got This Week in NXT, and where I felt like maybe Raw was not as surprising and big as far as being the Raw after WrestleMania, we got some pretty interesting surprises this week on NXT, a very packed show. It started off with Karrion Kross doing a promo now as the new NXT champion, commending Finn Balor on his efforts, but also reestablishing pretty much the way that it was supposed to go the first time around. That he is going to be champion for a long, long time, and he intends to be a fighting champion, and he will take on anyone. Though we don't know who yet, but, the challenge has been set. Up next, we have Mercedes Martinez versus Jessie Kamea. Mercedes Martinez won that match with a back-to-belly pile driver. The interesting about this is after the match, she told commentary to give Raquel Gonzalez a message that she wants to go after the NXT Women's Championship. However, later on in the show, we got a confrontation between Mercedes Martinez and Zoe Stark. So it looks like at some point in the future, we're going to get a match between them, possibly to determine the new number one contender for the NXT Women's Championship. And that in and of itself is just money. Shut up and take my money. Yeah. I don't have to pay money for this, but I would pay money for this.
I would too, yeah. Like, this is such an exciting matchup between these two. Like,
And I really love that this is establishing that Raquel is the woman right now. This isn't like this isn't like going to just be for a week or two. She's probably going to have a bunch of people chasing her for a while, and that makes me super excited.
We'll get to it in a minute as far as, Raquel, because it did set up a really interesting angle when she did her speech later on in the show. But we got to get to the NXT.
I hadn't even remembered that part yet.
We have to get to the big title match, NXT Cruiserweight Championship. Santos Escobar put out an open challenge both on social media earlier in the day and on TV that he would defeat anyone who stepped up to him and had an open challenge title match. Kushida was the person who responded, and the match itself was really good. The best match of the night. If you're looking for good wrestling, this is it. This is one of the best wrestling matches of the week that was not on Ring of Honor. So I just need to preface that. One of my favorite spots was with Santos Escobar swung Kushida into the steel steps, and then on the top of the steps put that Boston Crab on him while his neck was just being crushed to the steel step. I mean, that was just brutal. And then Kushida himself ended up using the Phantom, or had an answer for the Phantom Driver by using an atomic drop and a series of kicks and strikes that really helped him really create some space between him and Santos Escobar. At the end of the match, though, this ended with a series of pinfall attempts back and forth a few times, and Kushida got the quick pin for the win, and became the new NXT Cruiserweight Champion, which shocked me. I think it shocked a lot of fans after the night that Escobar had. Really, I mean, he started off saying he is the undisputed Cruiserweight Champion. He did all of that work at TakeOver to then lose the title this week. So that leaves a big question mark as to what that even means for Santos, for Legado. What is happening here? When Kushida was in the back, though, Jordan Devlin did approach him and saying he wanted an opportunity. It doesn't seem like it's happening very soon, because he did mention he's going to be leaving for a while. So who knows if Santos is going to win it back, if we're going to see maybe some three-way action between Santos, Kushida, and Jordan Devlin at some point. But Santos Escobar's reign as NXT Cruiserweight Champion is over. I want to get your thoughts, because I was shocked.
I was shocked too, and the only thing I can think of is that maybe this is related to a call up, because he was on fire with the title and he was so good.
Don't say that. Don't tell me that.
I don't want it to be. Maybe he's just moving up. I mean, Fantasma versus Karrion Kross, or Santos Escobar, I guess now, versus Karrion Kross. That would be exciting to me. That's something I could get behind. They were always very careful to keep his weight on the cusp of being too heavy for the cruiserweight title, so I could see him moving up to the heavyweight or even the North American title scene for a while. But I don't know. I mean, SmackDown hasn't aired as of when we record this, and I
I was shocked and horrified by that idea, because that was the first thing that popped into my head is anytime an NXT wrestler who is still on fire loses the title, that usually means they get a call up. and just absolutely that was a crushing thought. So I did console myself with the same thing, like, okay, then maybe he was tired of the weight loss thing, and maybe they're going to put him in the North American title picture now, which would not hurt my feelings.
Speaking of North American title, it did cross my mind. I mean, we did have that back and forth with Leon Ruff and Johnny Gargano, where they went back and forth on the North American title for a while. Maybe we do get that, where Santos will win it back within a few weeks, and it kind of goes, back and forth. That did cross my mind, as like, please God, let this be what it is. But I don't know. It was just very strange that they did all of that work with the ladder match at TakeOver, and the next show he loses it. So it is very
super bizarre.
Super strange.
I do want to point out, though, that I really like the evolution of the Open Challenge to taking place on social media now. Because that really actually makes it make more sense to me. Back in the old ECW days where, somehow the music guy knew to hit Balls Mahoney's music as soon as somebody called out to the ECW locker room. Just always I was in the moment and I was excited, but then later I'm like, how did they know? Yeah. But if you do this, that gives Kushida time to go, you know what? I'm not going to stay home and watch TV tonight. I'm going to go win the 205 championship. And
I like that too. That's cool.
Yeah. So, very interesting to see, and we'll have to wait and see what happens. I do also want to know, the results of a few matches. Leon Ruff versus Isaiah Swerve Scott. This is a program that's been going on for quite some time. Isaiah Swerve Scott did a really good promo before this, pre-recorded. I loved it as far as in like a recording studio. It was just very like a cool vibe. He won, the match using the JML driver for the win, and continued to attack Leon Ruff afterwards. So as much as it seemed like this was a way to kind of finalize that feud, maybe it's not ending anytime soon. We also had Dexter Lumis, Bronson Reed, Ember Moon, and Shotzi Blackheart team up against The Way. And this were some great spots as far as the interactions between the men and the women. Bronson Reed threw Shotzi Blackheart onto the group outside, which was a perfect utilization of that reckless abandonment that I always talk about with Shotzi Blackheart. We also saw Candice LeRae, very well known for her intergender wrestling skills, being able to utilize that in this match as well. Dexter Lumis, Bronson Reed, Ember Moon, and Shotzi Blackheart did win that match. And it seems like there's somehow that program is still going, but I loved seeing that interaction between the men and women, especially that dynamic between like Bronson Reed and Ember Moon, like super different, body types and wrestling styles, but the fact that, she was able to do something that she usually does, going off, outside of the ring, but was able to leverage someone like Bronson Reed for that, a nice spin to it.
Yeah.
I do want to get to Raquel Gonzalez, and really, this had layers upon layers. Raquel Gonzalez had a kind of a championship celebration. Dakota Kai introduced her, and Raquel had a few minutes to kind of really talk about her rise to being on the top of the women's division. And then the lights went out, and we saw Franky Monet, aka Taya Valkyrie, come out with her dog and say that she is now here for the women's division. And we got some interaction between Raquel Gonzalez and Franky Monet. A lot of it too, I know we're not seeing Taya Valkyrie, but she did refer to herself as La Güera Loca. And so that I was happy with. Like that. And even just the interactions they had in Spanish, she called her a cabrona, which I was like, oh, okay. But it is kind of strange because now Raquel's almost being presented as a baby face when this rise happened when she was a heel. So I'm, not sure I would like for her to stay as a heel. I think that's where her bread and butter is. It does seem though
magic.
Franky Monet is coming out as, just more of a cocky heel. But also what happened after Franky left, we did have Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair come to celebrate the new Raw Women's Champion and SmackDown Women's Champion. And that too, having that moment with all of their gold was awesome to see. Really the evolution of the NXT women's division. And when you hold that NXT women's title belt or you're just part of that division, big things are in store for you. So it was an awesome moment. But I wanted to get your thoughts on both the championship celebration and then the debut of Franky Monet.
Yeah, well, I was excited. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was especially excited for Franky Monet. We've all mentioned we're big Taya fans, for a long time now. But the chance to see her do something new and something different, maybe something we haven't seen from Taya before, is pretty unusual. So I like that, and I think they're definitely leaning into the heel thing for her. Her vignettes both said "See you next Tuesday," and that was such a mean and crass touch that I loved, because it just set the tone that this is going to be a bad bitch that shows up in NXT. We want to see this, the baddest, and I want to see Taya in that position, and I think we're going to get that, that she's going to be like the queen of the heels, and I'm good with that.
So, first off, I was super excited to see this segment. This is one of the clips that I went hunting for right after the show went off the air, because I knew somebody would have it. But, I think that part of the reason that Raquel came off a little more face today was because they were building towards that moment where you have the fans cheering as all of them are in the ring. To Dusty's point, I think Taya is going to again be kind of the Omega level of heel anyway. Mm-hmm. So we may have a situation like we have we were talking about earlier with the Bucks and the Death Triangle, where you have two different types of heel dynamic working.
Very true.
And that would make it super interesting. It also is something that we haven't seen a lot of in the NXT women's division. Mm-hmm. So it would be a fantastic way to keep the wrestling quality as high as it's been, while mixing it up so that fans don't necessarily grow bored with the dynamic. Very exciting stuff. I'm still on the record as hating the name Franky Monet.
Yeah.
But she picked it out. That was another story that came out on her Twitter, is that she picked it out. I know probably WWE said, give us a list of names and we'll, they had to vet it. But, she is okay with the name change. And I think at the end of the day, what she's emphasizing is she's still her. You could still look at her and know she's Taya from a mile away, regardless of whatever her name is. So that is such an important thing, that she has such a strong identity and character day one coming into NXT. And for fans who are not familiar with her, she made it very clear who she was right within the first few minutes of her even talking. And that's her without even wrestling. So the fact that we're going to see that, I'm sure in the next few weeks, is only going to really solidify her as someone who has really the total package. Someone who can talk, someone who has personality, someone who can wrestle with others. Because, too, if we do see her in the title picture, there is a very big experience gap between her and Raquel, and likely a lot of people on that roster. So it is going to be very interesting to see that.
She's at a very different point in her career, is where I was thinking, than most of that roster. She's not looking at 20 years into the future at this point. She still is going to go for a long time. Don't get me wrong. She could wrestle for 20, 30 more years, but that's not the expectation or the goal necessarily. She wants get, I shouldn't say need. She should get the big brass ring moments sooner rather than later, because that's what coming to the WWE for her was all about.
And exactly, I mean, she already is having her first night out with the NXT Women's Champion, and it's very likely that she's going to be in that title scene sooner rather than later. And we also saw for some people, being in the title scene right away, you don't get that title opportunity or you don't get to that win right away, but sometimes you circle back to it. Or, you move around and eventually, like Rhea Ripley got to get the NXT Women's Championship and then moved to Raw, whereas Bianca Belair had only 1 or 2 title opportunities before she left. So we also can see the spectrum of, what those next steps could possibly look like, either as NXT Women's Champion or not. So you're absolutely right in those.
But that's the weirdness about when Bianca Belair was in the NXT Women's Division. It still was one of the best women's division in the world, arguably the best at that time still. So when was she going to get a title run in there? Like, I mean, that's where we're still at now. Like, is Taya gonna get a title run, or is she just going to make Raquel and Dakota and whoever else they decide look like stars on their way up, and then she, who knows? I don't know what Taya's stated goals were, other than she wants to wrestle with the best, so of course she needed to go to NXT.
Yeah.
But I super excited by the possibility of Raquel facing any of the people we've talked about tonight. There's so many different stories that can be told. But with Mercedes Martinez, with a match, I'm never going to say it. It's just not going to happen. And so much going on. And it just, like I said earlier, the amount of investment that I'm seeing them put into her is really making me happy. This is someone I've all the way back when she was a classic. I saw this on the writing on the wall that this was where we're going to go to it. So seeing it realized is just making me unbelievably ecstatic.
Yeah. It's a new time in NXT. That's really the sense that I got from this show. It's a new chapter. It's a new day in NXT.
Yes.
And, you can sense it. Things are happening. So, and it's on a new night. This was the first week that it was on Tuesday nights on top of that. So they really did pack the show and really made it must-watch TV. Don't forget that you can get the results from NXT on luchacentral.com. Another thing that you can find on luchacentral.com is this week in Lucha Libre history. So, Dusty, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, that's right. It's time for This Week in Lucha Libre History. Be sure to check in at luchacentral.com every single day for this day in Lucha Libre History by Pep Carrera. He's got information, birth dates, anniversaries, matches of the day, amazing videos, and even more, all about Lucha Libre, and it's all free at luchacentral.com, your centralized place for all things Lucha Libre. This week I chose April the 15th, 1995, when Octagon, Super Muñeco, and Rey Mysterio won the Mexican National Trios Championship after beating Los Destructores, Tony Arce, Volcano, and Rocco Valente at the Deportivo Oceana and Mexico City. This was a really fun trios match. It's basically kind of what you expect. Rey Mysterio was obviously, on his rise at this point and just incredible. But Super Muñeco was really a star for me in the match. I enjoyed his work the most. He got the win for his team. So, it was an important figure in the match. Also, the heel team, Los Destructores, they did an amazing job at keeping Rey Mysterio separated from Octagon and Super Muñeco for the tension and the drama of the spots and the moments. Just a masterclass in Mexican trios wrestling, and I hope everybody checks it out. There is a link to it on the website, one of the few this week that have a video link, so I highly encourage everybody to check it out. Great match. What did you pick this week, Brendan?
This week, I went with something super random and interesting.
But it was cool, yeah.
This week, I chose April 13th, 1977, when Roddy Piper won the NWA World Light Heavyweight Championship, beating Chavo Guerrero in Los Angeles, California. So, first off, Roddy Piper, not somebody, I mean, I knew a lot of wrestlers did Mexico tours and wrestled with the luchadors back in the day, but I never really thought of Piper. I don't know why, because he was a big name, so they probably would have taken him there, let alone him winning a championship that is pretty much reserved for luchadors. And this is Chavo Guerrero, not Chavito, who we saw on WCW. This is the father of the Guerrero dynasty. This is the guy who trained
the OG.
Yeah. All the moves that are like the Guerrero bomb, all of those moves are named after things that he did. And I unfortunately the footage was not available, but I can only imagine just the kind of clinic that he got to put on during the technical part of the match in front of that crowd. And it's just a fantastic idea. I will point out that Chavo won it back a couple of days later. So this was not a long reign. It was probably just something to put more butts in seats for the secondary show, which is a classic way that used to happen in the territory days, is you have somebody win the title on a Tuesday so that they can have a bigger crowd on the Saturday when they're filming. So, but super exciting stuff. Very interesting. I'm happy that we saw that. This is one of the many weird things we can find on This Week in Lucha Libre. Speaking of that, though, Miranda, what did you find this week?
I chose April 12th, 2010, when Pimpinela Escarleta won Black Mamba's mask in a mask versus hair match. And this was in a house show in Nuevo Laredo. And this was the unmasking of Black Mamba. And for me, I really enjoy when I get the chance to watch Exoticos in their matches, but I didn't know about kind of the history between Pimpinela Escarleta and Black Mamba until you had kind of mentioned it, Brendan. The clip that was listed with this was very short, clips of the match itself, which was all over the arena. This was a hard-hitting match. I loved also seeing Pimpinela Escarleta as kind of like catwalk, as I like to call it, on the top rope.
Yeah.
That's like a whole new spin to it. And then was this like an iteration of Psycho Circus that got involved? I wasn't quite sure. Like, I just saw these clowns in the ring and I was like, who? And I was very confused.
I'm not certain that it was the Psycho Circus clowns. I think it might have just been Dave or some of the other Payaso inspired.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It might be Los Payasos.
Los Payasos, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, but they came in to beat down Black Mamba and help sway the match in Pimpinela Escarleta's favor. He got the pinfall and Black Mamba was forced to unmask. Which now we see Mamba, very much in the Exaltico character, and how can you hide a face that beautiful? So that itself is to me seemingly like a big turning point in Mamba's career. We did also then get to see a rematch of them. It was a hair versus hair match at Verano de Escándalo in 2016, and that one Pimpinela also won. So they've had just a long history that I wasn't really aware of until watching this match and doing some research. And it circles back, 6 years later, but it was a very fun match to watch. And for me too, especially Pimpinela Escarleta, who, I haven't watched a lot of his matches. I love the flair that he brings as an Exotico. He is technical, but his movesets have flair.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a classic feud. If anybody out there wants a good time, you can find any of the Pimpinella and Mamba or Black Mamba matches, and you will have a good time. You don't need context necessarily. You're just going to see two people going at it in a very physical and aggressive style while still being somewhat technical. So, I mean, it's just a fun match.
Well, don't forget to check out luchacentral.com for this day in Lucha Libre history. Let us know your thoughts and what you picked for your moment as this day in Lucha Libre history. But there's a lot more at luchacentral.com that you can find. Brendan, go ahead and tell our listeners what else they can find.
Well, yeah, if you're listening to us and you haven't visited luchacentral.com, it really, really is time to do it. luchacentral.com is your home your online home for Lucha Libre, where you can get to all the top news in English and in Spanish, find curated video content and original content not seen anywhere else, find when Lucha Libre events would be happening in your area, find photo galleries from top photographers covering Lucha Libre around the world, a place to have your voices heard from weekly polls to annual awards, seen and read by top executives in all of the major Lucha Libre promotions across the globe. And on top of all of that, it's free. I mean, we do this every week, but you can't beat free. You just can't.
It's my favorite price.
It's my favorite, and right now I'm saving a few pennies so that I can go to Expo Lucha in 2 years or next year or whatever it is.
Whatever it is.
So free is the price that I need to stay entertained now so that I can go to Expo Lucha. LuchaCentral.com, your centralized place for all things Lucha Libre.
Brendan, you have some CMLL news about their upcoming iPay-per-view and someone you already talked about earlier tonight.
Yeah, I'm going to start with that one.
Funner.
There was a press release from CMLL that established that they had parted ways with Bandido, which everybody was not at all surprised about because Bandido was probably just on loan and doing a few fun matches. He did say he really enjoyed it, but he also said over and over again that he had people that he wanted to work with in other parts of the Lucha world. And so, yeah, the worst kept secret is they quote unquote let Bandido go. The speculation is that it's because he had events at his own gym as well as in the future where he'd be working with AAA people, but that it could just as easily have been that they were saying these things so that there's less controversy when Bandido does that. Who knows? But yeah, Bandido not currently contracted by CMLL, although I suspect they would have him back at any time, just as long as he's willing to do it. And we have not been covering CMLL Televisa on this show, largely because it is available on CMLL's YouTube channel. It's not being covered. The results aren't even being covered on Lucha Central's recaps. They're covering the pay-per-views and the major title changes. But they did have a few things going on today, or last week. They had Ultimo Guerrero did defend the heavyweight title against Diamante Azul. I'm not really surprised there, but they were having some the Mexican trios quarterfinal matches. So you had Efisto, Luciferno, and Mephisto against Dragon Rojo Jr., Mysterioso Jr., and Polvora. They're not the Hell Brothers. I just lost it. Efisto, Luciferno, and Mephisto did advance on that one. Then you also had Guerrero Maya Jr., Star Jr., and Stuka Jr. against Black Panther, Blue Panther, and Blue Panther Jr. And a little bit of a surprise to me, Guerrero Maya Jr., Star Jr., and Stuka Jr. went out on that one. I was expecting the Cats would do better, but and then you had Guerrero Maya Jr., Star Jr., and Stuka Jr. wrestling against Hefesto, Luciferno, and Mephisto, and this one did not surprise me. The Technicos, Guerrero Maya Jr., Star Jr., and Stuka Jr. advanced on in that one. So we will be seeing the winner of the total tournament at the anniversary show, whether there's an audience there or not. But they've only announced 4 matches so far, so they're doing a nice slow build, and we may have to do more Televisa results as a result of all of that. I didn't mean to use the word result so many times in one sentence, but that is my CMLL report.
Dusty, you have some news on AAA's Auto Luchas.
Yeah, so that's kind of been the way Auto Luchas or AAA tapings have gone lately, is they've had their Puebla Magica and their Auto Luchas. But they are taking a break, I guess, right now. They very quietly canceled their 3rd week of Auto Lucha tapings at this drive-in theater they had been using, and with no real explanation, and the rescheduled date is to be announced, no set rescheduled date, but it did not seem to be an issue with the location itself, as the drive-in theater showed La La Land that night for people, and if you had AAA tickets, you could get in for free. So it's kind of interesting that they canceled their taping, but we'll see what comes of it and see what happens. There's really no rumor or any allusion to any reason they've canceled yet, but to do it so quietly and without much fanfare and no rescheduled date is interesting. So we'll see what comes of this. Hopefully I'll have more news on it next week. Other similar news with AAA, Lucha Libre Full Media Ventures, the company that is suing AAA and working, that had the working relationship with them through Lucha Underground, have filed new trademarks for Lucha Underground, both for like DVDs and products and for a TV show. So, maybe it's just to kind of leverage their position and leverage their holdings, but it's definitely interesting. And we've mentioned this a lot before. One of the biggest failures of Lucha Underground was merchandising. And even though it's too little too late, it would still be nice to get our hands on some of that merchandise and some of the DVDs and Blu-rays if they intend to release them. So we'll see what comes of that as well.
I would scoop up a Blu-ray in a hurry.
Oh, yeah. And our cable company lost the coverage, the carrier package for the 4th season. We never saw the entire 4th season, so I would snap that up instantly.
Yes. Very interesting news. Thank you, Dusty. Speaking of that, MLW, again, with the theories around Azteca Underground, that was a presence throughout this week's MLW Fusion. It was really a lucha-centric episode of MLW. All 3 matches had a lucha presence to it. Starting off first, which was, I believe, the best match of the show. Richard Holiday versus Gino Medina for the IWA Caribbean Championship. This was Gino's first title opportunity in MLW, which commentary did play. They also did play up a bit about the dynamic between Richard Holiday and Gino Medina, as Gino was formerly a member of the Dynasty. They parted on, not so great terms. Richard still, saying that he had Gino fired. Gina said that he quit. So they talked some crap to each other at the beginning of the match, kind of shoving each other. What became interesting in this match, though, is that Gino untied the top turnbuckle pad, and that was something that will mention as far as, how that impacted the match. But Holidays with ducking a Gino Medina kick, which, as we've seen, is some of his best strong suits as a luchador. And then Gino Medina almost got a 3 count with an inside cradle. But then Richard Holiday answered with a suplex, and they traded kicks back and forth. Now, as we get to the end of the match with that top turnbuckle exposed, both of them try and run each other into this top turnbuckle. However, it was Richard Holiday that was able to get Gino Medina face first into that turnbuckle. He used that in order to then get into his 2008 finisher and win to retain the IWA Caribbean Championship. No word yet on another contender, but there's also a possibility that this is not over yet. But a really solid match between these two, and definitely tension in history that adds to this match. Up next, we had Los Parks, LA Park and Hijo de LA Park versus the Dirty Blondes, Leo Brennan and Mike Patrick. Los Parks was accompanied by Selena De La Renta, and the Dirty Blondes were accompanied by Aria Blake. There's a reason I'm mentioning that. Both women were bickering before the match. You can tell they do not like each other. And the Dirty Blondes really came out aggressive. A clash of styles, really. Those brawler types versus Lucha Libre. But because of that brawler type, and it seemed like the Dirty Blondes had the number of Los Parks, they didn't let them breathe throughout the entirety of this match. But the, distractions by Selena, the distractions by Aria did play a role in how this match ended. Ultimately, we've seen what we keep seeing from Los Parks. LA Park Jr. came from underneath the ring. The referee was distracted, and LA Park actually did a low blow on both members of the Dirty Blondes. And then we had a double roll-up pin by LA Park and Hijo de LA Park, in which they then won and retained the MLW tag team titles. This match, the fact that they keep doing this angle of LA Park Jr. coming out, like now it's getting old. And even then, the way that this one went, where LA Park Jr. came out on the same side that Aria Blake was on, so she was literally like maybe 5 feet away from him and didn't quote unquote notice him. Like, I know this is pro wrestling, but come on, like there would have, this whole way that they keep retaining is getting a little old for me personally, and the fact that not only is it getting old, every time they do it is really sloppy, doesn't help. So I'm getting over this title reign really quick. But it may be a deeper tie-in to Azteca Underground, so I'm willing to be patient with this. Speaking of Azteca Underground, the main event, Alexander Hammerstone versus Mil Muertes for the National Openweight Championship. Again, like, Hammerstone's missile drop kicks are my favorite things. Like, he just executes them so well. They had action outside of the ring too, where it felt like very lucha style rules, where Mil Muertes used a belt and was choking Hammerstone on it. Of course, on MLW, they have a 20 count, so they have more time to be outside of the ring. But even then, Mil Muertes kind of jumped back in to then restart the count. He knew that his biggest advantage was to take this out of the ring to kind of wear Hammerstone down. But it's Hammerstone. He came back in with a really big clothesline. Again, being able to use his kicks for someone of his size, being so agile is a very scary thing. However, Mil Muertes does what he does best and came back with a really strong power slam. Towards the end of the match, we had Hammer hit Muertes with a discus forearm and almost got the near fall. Mil Muertes responded with a backstabber and then almost with a power bomb in the end, but Hammerstone was able to pull out the Nightmare Pendulum for the win. Commentary played up pretty much well. If the Nightmare Pendulum comes into play, it's done. And that's exactly what happened. So Hammerstone was able to reclaim possession of the Openweight Championship. Mil had it, but again, he never lost it. So, it's back in Hammerstone's possession. Hammerstone did tease a press conference next week with some dynastic information. So we will see An interesting spot during the show was that Selena De La Renta was confronted by the associate of Azteca Underground asking if she had gotten permission to do something. She said she didn't need permission, but she felt like she had a surefire way to get all the gold. That didn't happen, so maybe there's going to be consequences for her through Azteca Underground or another strategy that they're going to use, but we're still not getting really any hints as to who is part of Azteca Underground, what are they looking for, what is their involvement in MLW. That is still a very big mystery. So I would say if you're looking for a good lucha match this week, watch the first match, skip the second, and definitely watch the third.
Yeah. Selena just seems to have a real problem getting along with the ladies in MLW. Like, I can't think of a single woman in that roster that she does not.
Yeah, she's had this feud with Alicia Atu on social media. Her and Aria Blake fought after the tag match as well. So, I mean, there's definitely back and forth. Another interesting little tidbit, TJP is going to be facing Buku Dao next week. This is now heel TJP that we get here compared to where we see him in other roles. So it's kind of a weird thing to see a heel TJP. I don't believe it, because he just has literally a baby face. But I could appreciate him doing a different, something different in MLW. But again, my match for that week, watch Richard Holiday versus Gino Medina. It's a really, really solid match. And Mule Mortis versus Hammerstone too. Really, really solid. And two just big ass dudes fighting each other, which,
Yeah, sometimes that's super exciting.
Yeah.
There are definitely fans of that kind of match, and that is one of the best varieties of that kind of match. So
yes, yeah. Up next, we have a quick Impact Wrestling update. Now, this is the thing: is good news with NXT moving to Tuesdays, and we get to watch it, a day earlier. Impact has now moved to Thursdays. So, as of this recording, Impact has not aired, and that will be something that, as we record the show typically on Thursday nights, we may not be able to get to that week's Impact results because they are happening while we may be recording. So that is just something for you listeners to know as a heads up. But I do have the results for Hardcore Justice, and there were some very interesting matches with some lucha presence. We had a triple threat tag team match, Ace Austin and Madman Fulton, TJP and Falaba, and Josh Alexander with a new tag team partner, Petey Williams, making his return to Impact. Josh Alexander and Petey Williams get the win. Alexander put his knees up with TJP attempting to do the Mamba Splash, and then that allowed Petey Williams to do what he does best, the Canadian Destroyer. And then Josh Alexander forced Falaba to tap out with the ankle lock submission. This keeps seeming to be playing into the bigger picture for the X Division Championship. We also had Shira versus Hernandez in a chairly legal match, which is just a big chairs match. But I kind of dig the pun. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. It's good.
Shira won this match. Some of this was due to the distraction from Rohit Raju. He came in and he hit Hernandez with a steel chair from behind, and Shira was able to use that for the pin. And there was a point where Shira hit a huge suplex on Hernandez on top to a big old pile of chairs. And Hernandez kicked out. So it's Hernandez we don't see a lot of, but this is one where I think they could have done a better job building it up. Like, this was kind of a random match, but I actually would have loved to see this as more of a longer, program. And maybe they will, but it was one that, for me, surprisingly, I was into. We also had Doc Gallows versus Black Taurus in a match, and this one, a lot of it was, distractions. Doc Gallows was accompanied by Carl Anderson, so Carl Anderson did distract the referee, or Gallows distracted the referee, while Carl Anderson attacked Black Taurus ringside. However, Black Taurus, a great drop kick, and got a near fall towards the end of the match. But again, the distraction by Carl Anderson allowed Doc Gallows to catch Black Taurus off guard and win with a choke slam. So 2 big dudes in a big match. And then the main event, we had Violent by Design, which was Eric Young, Joe Doring, Diener, and Rhino versus Team Dreamer, which was Rich Swann, Willie Mack, Eddie Edwards, and Trey Miguel. The way that this match worked was that 2 men started alone for 5 minutes, and then every 2 minutes a new person entered from an alternating team. So it's like kind of like War Games, but no cages. That's the best comparison I have. And then the match cannot end until the final person from each team, or the final person in general, had entered. And so, as far as, chaos all over the place, but surprisingly, Violent by Design won. It was Eric Young who did a pile driver on Willie Mack to get the win. So this is a little strange because you have your world champion in this group and you're trying to build him up to Rebellion in just a few weeks. So you don't want him to win, even if it's not him getting the pin. But it was kind of an interesting situation. You wonder why they didn't have him in this match. Maybe he should have done something else, or not at all, and maybe kind of keep that mystery from him. But, his Impact Wrestling, there's just things I can't explain sometimes. But, that was the results of Hardcore Justice. Rebellion is still scheduled for next Sunday, April 25th. Again, we're getting the title versus title match. Rich Swann, Impact World Champion, versus Kenny Omega, AEW World Champion. 1 man will leave with 2 titles. Next week's episode is going to be the final one before Rebellion. This week they are advertising a press conference between the 2. So if you are listening to this, go ahead and check out Impact Wrestling on Twitch. Again, it's now on Thursday nights. You can also find them on Access TV. And that's it for this week's episode of the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast, the 50th episode.
Yeah.
Thank you all for listening. If this is, if you are a day one-ish, thank you so much for listening to us over the past year. If you are a newer listener, thank you so much for joining us on this crazy ride that we call the world of Lucha Libre. Don't forget to check out luchacentral.com, your centralized place for all things Lucha Libre. You can follow Lucha Central on social media at Lucha Central on Facebook and Instagram, and at luchacentral.com on Twitter. We mentioned the YouTube page earlier. Go check it out. You have exclusive interviews, matches, and content that you're not going to find anywhere else. While you're at it, go ahead and follow us on social media. Dusty, where can our listeners find you?
I am on Instagram at Dusty Murphy, and I am on Facebook at facebook.com/Dusty Murphy.
And Brendan, where can our listeners find you?
I am 321. That's the numbers 3, 2, and 1 T-shirt guy. So 321 T-shirt guy. I'm on Twitter. Starting there. Just starting right there. I go to Twitter. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, but not nearly as much. A little more, since a couple of my coworkers, the only way they talk to me is on Instagram. So you might catch me a little bit there a little more often, but Twitter is usually the fastest and most interesting way. And I promise to not make you sit through entire threads of people talking about Ivelisse or other fun things if you really don't want to.
Me, Miranda Morales. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at the #Miranda, spelled out. Go ahead and follow all of us, especially if you are an independent wrestling promotion, wrestler, fan. Reach out to Brendan about any recent Lucha Libre matches and shows. Again, it's at his discretion. But if you check off all the boxes, you may be featured on a future episode or future edition of the Indie Roundup. So make sure you reach out to Brendan, because we are all fans of independent wrestling, and we want to make sure you guys get a shout out, you guys get some recognition for the work that you're doing. So reach out to Brendan directly if you have any Lucha Libre matches or shows that you would like to have us review, watch, any of that. Yeah. And don't forget that we are also, again, streamed on luchacentral.com and thechairshot.com. You can also find us on your favorite podcast streaming platform like Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Podbay, iHeartRadio, all of that. So if you do that, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review. You can subscribe, get notifications every time a new episode of the Lucha Central Weekly podcast drops. You can give us a 5-star review and also or 5-star rating and leave us a review. Leave comments either on our social media or on the weekly episode pages. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, your opinions on anything that we talk about, or just your opinions in general about things happening in the world of Lucha Libre. We always are open to feedback, and we just want to know your thoughts. Do you agree with us, disagree with us? Whatever it is, let us know through social media or through your reviews on whatever podcast streaming platform you are using. For Dusty Murphy and Brendan Barr, I'm Miranda Morales. Thank you all so much for listening to this week's episode. We're going to be back next week. Oh, don't you worry. We come back for 51 next week. So stay tuned. Everyone have a great week.